morning, St. Matthew's Church. My name is Dr. Zeph, Gaya, a member of this cathedral since 1978 to date. I'm privileged to be standing before you this morning to address you on a medical topic that is disturbing the world at the moment. First of all, I'm born again, and Christ is my personal Savior, and I'm glad that I come to know Him because even before I knew Him, He has been gracious to me, and I've never experienced any suffering that I can talk of. As we are promised in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And even in this time when we have this disease of coronavirus, the Lord is still with us and is guiding us in all ways. COVID-19, as it is called, literally means coronavirus disease 2019. It is a disease that started in China, in a province called Wuhan, or a town called Wuhan of about 11 million people. And from there it has spread to the rest of the world. This happened towards the end of 2019, hence the name COVID-19. Other diseases also are caused by the coronavirus, because coronavirus is not only unique to this disease, COVID-19. Initially, most of you will remember that we had a disease called SARS that ravaged the world a little bit, and SARS literally means severe acute respiratory syndrome, and it is also caused by coronavirus. The symptoms of coronavirus, most of you know by now. This is fever, there is cough, there could be difficulty in breathing, there is sore throat, and there could be just a discomfort in the throat. You may have a fever, you may complain of chills, you may have chest pains, and you may have what is called general malaise. That is tiredness and just feeling that you don't want to do anything. Your body becomes lazy. So when you have any of these symptoms, it is better to go and seek for medical attention at this time. But you know, even common colds or even influenza would cause the same symptoms. But it is unique now because of having this disease that when you have any of these symptoms, it would be better that you seek for help. However, there are a large majority who are symptomatic, people who do not have any symptoms at all, and they are moving in society, and they would be having the virus and would be able to spread it from one person to the other. In some cases, if it becomes extreme, you could get diarrhea or vomiting, but none of these symptoms would occur in one person in all the times. However, the incubation period of this disease is 2 days to 14 days, with an average of 5 days. That means if you get the virus now, it could show anytime between 2 days and 14 days. Hence, the reason why we are preoccupied with quarantining or putting people away for 14 days to observe how they behave and how this disease manifests in them. This disease was declared by WHO as a pandemic on the 11th of March 2020. pandemic is a disease that has spread beyond the normal locality. It has been seen in other countries, and it has crossed through all the countries in the world. There is hardly any country without the disease. I think there's one country in Africa, Lesotho, which is in the middle of South Africa, does not have a disease. And it is a misnomer because South Africa is the leading country in Africa. The first case in Kenya was diagnosed and reported on the 13th of March 2020. So far, there is no known cure for this disease. There is no vaccine, and as such, there is no treatment. The treatment that is carried out now is for symptoms. We treat the fever, we treat cough, we treat any chest infection with antibiotics, and we give supportive oxygen. Oxygen can be given with a condition, a method called CPAP, CPAP, which means continuous positive airway pressure, or it can be given through ventilators. However, prevention is the best cure for this disease. And in prevention, you have seen now we walk around with masks. We are told to wash our hands, and you have seen people washing their hands everywhere. We are told to keep social distancing, and we are told to stay at home as much as possible. So if you don't have anything to do in town, the best thing is to stay at home and be sure that you will keep away from this disease. There have been controversies on this disease as far as treatment is concerned. First of all, the first controversy is the origin of the disease. It is said that it could have originated from the animal market in Wuhan, and some have said, including the American president, President Trump, that this virus was grown in a lab and let loose by the Chinese, the rest of the world. However, World Health Organization has refuted this and said there is no evidence to support this disease being released to the rest of the world. But as far as treatment is concerned, some have claimed that some herbal treatments can prevent or cure this disease, and the herbs have been developed in Madagascar, where there is a drink called COVID, which the president of Madagascar says, if you take this, then you will prevent COVID or you will get cured. There has been controversy about a vaccine. There was a time when it was said the vaccine has been developed and it is going to be tried in Africa. And there was a hue and a cry. There were clips in the social media, people like President Obama telling Africans not to accept the vaccine. However, at the moment, the vaccine is being developed in Oxford. The developed world have come together, put money to try and do research in development of vaccine, and also to get medicine to try and cure this disease. In the area of vaccine, it was said that if you are vaccinated, they will also plant a chip into your body that will identify you, and they likened it to what is in the Bible, the mark of the beast, the 666. However, there's been no proof as to this. Drug trials are going to be done with antiretroviral drugs that have been developed, the drugs that were used for treating Ebola. Some of them have been found to be a little bit useful in trying to treat COVID-19. And Kenya is one of the countries that has been identified, along with others, for the trial of these drugs. You have heard it said in the past about treating this with malaria drugs and hydroxyquinone and chloroquine. with treating with antibiotics like azithromycin and treating with elements like zinc. However, there has been no conclusive proof in this. In France, where they have done researches on the malarial drugs, they found that they were of no use. But some people are reporting very good results with using those drugs. Home treatment versus hospitalization. In the Western world, especially in England, most of the people who are sick initially are told to quarantine at home and communicate with their doctors on telephone, and they are treating a lot of people at home. However, in our case in Kenya, the moment you are found positive, you put in a government quarantine and looked after. And this is the reason why many people are fearing to come forward for testing, because they know that the moment you are positive, you will be locked away for a minimum of 2 weeks, and it could prolong up to 4 or 5 weeks. So home treatment has proved to be good. If we are disciplined and we are able to isolate ourselves, then we may be able to contain the spread of this disease. Isolation is very important. Quarantine is very important as far as this disease is concerned. Lockdown in some countries has proved very useful. In Africa, the first country to carry out a lockdown when the disease was announced is Rwanda. And Rwanda is a country that has reported 261 cases with 0 deaths and 129 recoveries. The outcome of this disease is not very gloomy, because about 80% of those people who are affected will eventually recover, and less than 7% of those will die. Quarantine has been opposed by some people, and they were suggesting, why don't we just let people move around? In Taiwan, for example, they have not had a lockdown, they have not had quarantine, and they have had the least number of cases, and yet it is just near China. They have been disciplined in wearing masks, they have been disciplined in keeping social distancing, and they have been disciplined in isolating themselves from each other. And we find that they have managed to contain this disease. Quarantine is biblical. As you know, when the children of Israel were moving from Egypt to the promised land, there were times when they were asked to quarantine. And in the Bible, when we read 2 Kings verse 15, chapter 15 verse 5, we find that the Lord struck the king, King Uzziah, so that he was a leper for the days of his death, and he lived in a separate house, while Jotham, the king's son, was over the household, judging the people of the land. So you can see with leprosy, and you have seen that in many verses when you read in the New Testament, the first books of the New Testament, the lepers were outcast and they stayed apart from each other. So quarantine was there in the Bible. In Leviticus 13 verse 4 says, but if the bright spot is white on the skin of his body, and it does not appear to be deeper, then the skin and the hair on it has not turned white. Then the priest shall isolate him who has so been infected for 7 days. You can see also Leviticus 13:46, Numbers 5:23. These were the rules that were given down to Moses by God for the children of the Israelites when they were moving. As far as sanitation is concerned and quarantine, it is also biblical. When we look at the book of Leviticus 14 verse 8, it says, "The one to be cleansed shall then wash his clothes and shave off all his hair and bathe in the water and be clean. Now, afterwards, he may enter the camp, but he shall stay outside his tent for 7 days." So you can see they were quarantining for periods of time. In Africa at the moment, South Africa is the leading country in infections with COVID at over 7,000, with 148 deaths and 2,700 recoveries. However, in terms of deaths, Algeria is leading with about 470 deaths, followed by Morocco with, I think, 452 deaths. In Kenya, as you have seen, we now have 607 cases with 29 deaths and about 129 recoveries in Kenya. However, in China, where the disease started, the world feels that they misreported or there is underreporting, because China is only reporting in that population of 11 million, and the population of China of 1.4 billion, they're only reporting 82,000 cases, 886, with 4,000 deaths and 77,000 recoveries. So the rest of the world, if you look at countries like America, we now have over 1 million cases, 76,000 deaths, and 217 recoveries. The other countries that have been badly affected is Italy, Spain, and England. But if you look at these deaths and compare them with what has happened in the world, I'll give you comparative statistics in the first 2 months of this year, that is January and February. The coronavirus in January and February killed 2,360 people. The common cold in February killed over 69,000 people. Malaria in January and February killed 140,000 people. Suicide in the first 2 months killed 153,000 people. Road accidents killed 193,000, and the HIV loss was 240,000. Alcohol, 258,000, while smoking was 716, and cancer was 1,177,000. Now, if you look at other disasters that we're having at the moment, in Kenya, for example, up to 2 days ago, floods have killed 194,000, which is much more than the 29,000 that coronavirus has killed. I have been amazed when I look out during the day. If you look at the clouds, they are as white as snow. I'm looking at the compound outside the church. The grass is grown, the mud is less, the pollution that we bring by our vehicles is gone, the pollution that aeroplanes bring on the air is gone. You remember when God created earth and heaven? At last he created man, and he made man to be a steward of his own creation. But what have we done? We have degraded some of his creations. We have cut trees from the hills and left them bare. We have removed all the grass from wherever they were. So when it rains now, there is nothing that holds the water. The floods come down and come down mightily. This disease, as God says, the plans he has for us, he knows when he's going to end it. God's time is the best time. and we'll come back to tomorrow. And as human beings, we'll even forget that there was anything that locked us up like we have been locked now. We'll go on normally and forget about God. What it is telling us, God is telling us, is reminding us that at this time, we should turn more to Him. And I can assure you, I have talked to several people, and there is no time when people have turned to God more than this time. Everybody is praying daily. Most people are trying to read their Bibles daily. So God is giving us a waking up call that we should turn back to Him more and more. For people of St. Matthew's, may God be our light and our guide always. Thank you.